All right, what's going on, everybody? I'm really looking forward to making this video. Um, I'm hoping that by the end of this, some people can really take away some key things and learn about how they can program for themselves. This video is not just going to be a template program that you can run. I'm really trying to teach people how they can program for themselves. So this is for you if you are pretty much brand new to training, or you've trained before but have had a long time off and you're coming back and getting back into it. So I'm pretty much want to go over some advice tips on how I would start up on training and how to progress from there. With that being said, though, if you've been training for some time and you find that you're just stuck and you're stalling, then this will also help you out as well. I kind of have a lot of points to go over. I'm going to try to not talk for too long, but I did write this all up in a Google Docs that I'll put in the description below, so you can just always click on that and read through that as well. So to just get into it, first off, why do we even program in the first place? Why is programming even important? So it kind of comes down to two reasons. Number one, it allows you to organize your training around a goal and create a plan for that goal. And number two, it allows you to change and adapt and modify that plan as time goes on based on your performances. So it's important to have a plan and to know how that plan will change, because if you don't know how you're progressing, then you have no metrics telling you where you're at, then you don't really know how to progress. So a program is just a way to organize all the data you've been doing, and which should be created based on a goal, so that when you feel stuck or plateaued, you know you can physically look at the data and see what's going on and make changes based on that. So if you're not programming and you're not tracking stuff, you're eventually going to get stuck. You're going to plateau. Every single person does. Um, but without programming, you're just going to change things without any real reason for it. You're just going to be changing it, and you're kind of just guessing. So programming takes the guesswork out of it, and having some sort of guide or rules helps to, well, guide you into how to program. And that's really how I look at programming. There's no like real, like, I don't think it's like, I don't have hard rules that I follow. It's kind of, you adapt it to yourself, and really it's learning it's learning how you actually respond to training, and you program for you. So I'm hoping that that's kind of the key takeaway from this, and that you can learn how to program for yourself. So to start a program, you first obviously need to define your goal. I'm assuming you're trying to build as much muscle as possible and to get as big as you can. That's kind of the type of training I'm into. That's kind of where my knowledge is and where I spend most of my time learning and researching. So I really only feel comfortable talking on that. So not that these things may not apply to you if you're more strength focused or whatever, but more for hypertrophy focused people and someone who wants to build as much muscle as possible, this is what you'll want to listen to this. So to program, first you want to look at how you're going to essentially group the exercises. So the first way you could look at it is you have 5 movement patterns. Number 1 would be vertical pressing, and then you have number 2 horizontal pressing, and then number 3 is vertical pulling, and then horizontal pulling or rowing, whatever you want to call it, and then you have hinging, like at the hips. Those are the 5 basic movement patterns. That's what they teach you in school. That's what all the organizations who, you know, teach programming and stuff, that's how they make programs. This is a really basic way of looking at it, and it's pretty good if you just want to get in general shape, and just you're just like exercising, you're trying to get in shape. But if you're trying to build as much muscle as possible, um, this just isn't going to cut it. So you're going to have to break it down into muscle groups. And for a beginner, um, the main muscle groups you're going to want to focus on would be the chest, the back, the shoulders, triceps, biceps, quads, hamstrings and glutes, and calves. Those are, I know there's other smaller muscles, but as like I said, as a beginner, as someone who's newer to training and figuring out how to program for themselves, or someone coming back, that's what you're going to want to focus on. So now I'm going to kind of go into like steps of how I would think about developing a program for yourself. So this would be like step number 1. You would write down all these muscle groups, right? And write down your top 2 to 3 lifts that you've done in the past, or if you've never done it, that's fine as well. Write down like 2 or 3 lifts that you've done for that muscle group, and make a list for all those muscle groups I've listed. I've also done this in that Google Docs as well, so you could just refer to that. And then what you're going to do is, first we're going to set frequency. So frequency is the amount of times you train that muscle group per week. For everything, it's going to be 2 times per week. That's just a pretty basic place to start. I'm not really going to go into like detail on why, but like 1 time isn't enough. 3 times is excess, especially if you're starting out. So 2 times is kind of that sweet spot, and that's going to be pretty universal for everybody. So then leading into rep ranges, if it's a compound lift, train 4 to 8 reps. And if it's an isolation lift, train 8 to 12 reps. Compound 4 to 8, isolation 8 to 12. This is all written down too, so you don't have to like take notes or anything. But you're going to do this for the first 6 weeks. Why 6 weeks? Because usually it takes your central nervous system to adapt to a movement pattern in about 6 weeks. So your first 6 weeks of training is really just your body getting used to it. And then really when you make like noticeable progress, like visually in the mirror, is usually after 6 weeks. So the first 6 weeks is like you're getting into it, and after that is when you're really going to notice. So once you hit the 6-week mark, what you're going to do is switch the rep ranges. So compounds are now going to go to the higher rep range, isolations are going to go to the lower. So this would be compounds at 8 to 12, and isolations are going to go to 4 to 8. What this is doing is basically just changing how your muscle is going to adapt to that lift. So a lot of people will run a lift in their program, say for about 4 to 6 weeks, and in the classic rep range of 10 reps, right? They're hitting 10 reps every time. They'll get to a point where they stall out on the lift, and then they'll just swap the lift out. So this is kind of following the idea of milking a lift for as long as you can. I'm sure you've heard this before. I didn't invent this, but this is just true, and you should do it. You'll milk it for as long as you can. And the way to do this is to change the rep range. So For example, for chest, you're training incline press for the first 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, you're doing 4 to 6 reps. Once you start to stall, after 4 to 6 weeks, change that rep range to now somewhere within 8 to 12, whether it's 10 to 12 or 8 to 10, whatever. But now you're kind of resetting that, which what this is going to do is obviously it's going to end up lowering the weight, which is you're now going to have to force that muscle to train in that lift a little bit differently. And this is just a great way to keep the same lift in your program for an extended period of time, longer than what most people usually do. After an additional 6 weeks, so let's say I use the incline press as an example. The first week you were training 4 to 6 reps. After 6 weeks, you change that to 8 to 12 reps, and then you run that for another 4 to 6 weeks. After that point in time, you can add a second exercise for that muscle group. So, pick your second best lift for that muscle group. Just for example, let's just say dips. So you ran incline press for low reps, and then you went to high reps. And then now what you can do is add a second lift for that muscle group. You're still at 2 times per week. So let's say one day, let's just say Monday. You're doing 2 times per week, right? Monday is an upper day, and then Wednesday is an upper day. Monday you train incline press, and you're back in the lower rep range at 4 to 6, and then you add dips on the second upper day for chest, and you are also in the lower rep range for 4 to 6. And then what you're going to want to do is essentially just repeat the same process with that second lift, rotate it through different rep ranges. And then I would recommend not swapping a lift out until you've ran it for at least 12 weeks. So this allows you, so let's say you change the rep ranges every 4 weeks. This allows you to go 3 different rep ranges with a single lift before you swap it out. So for example, the incline press, you train that with 4 to 6 reps for 4 weeks, and then you switch to 10 to 12 reps for the next 4 weeks. And then the next 4 weeks you go to 8 to 10 reps. And then you train that for 3 whole months, 12 weeks, 1 lift, 3 different rep ranges. At that point in time, I would say it's okay to swap out a lift. So that's kind of how I want you to picture at least the lifts in your program and how you're structuring it around muscle groups rather than just movement patterns. So going into volume, compound lifts, so this is the amount of sets you do per session and per week. So the compound lifts will start at 2 sets per session, so totaling 4 sets per week. Isolations will start at 3 sets per session, totaling 6 sets per week. Why are we starting isolations higher? Because they're smaller muscle groups and they recover better and they can just handle more. Think of the last time your tricep or your bicep was like actually really sore the next day. Like maybe sometimes mine's a little sore the next day, but I could probably train it, or your shoulders, for instance, I could probably train it the next day and for sure 48 hours after. So when do you increase volume? You will increase this once you are doing more than one exercise for that muscle group and you have rotated both exercises through the rep ranges. So essentially it'll be 2 lifts that you've had in for at least 2 months. Then you can increase the volume. And the way you're going to do this is for the first week, only increase one set. So if you're doing incline press the other day, you're doing dips, and you're at 2 and 2 sets. The first week, only pick whatever one you want. I'm just going to pick incline press, change that to 3 sets. At the end of the week, kind of ask yourself, how was recovery? How was that session? How did that session feel? Did you still, did that muscle feel too fatigued with that third set? Was it fine? Did it recover like really good? For the total week, was that muscle still fine? And basically, if you answer yes to a lot of those, you can add a third set to that second exercise for the following week. Don't feel like you have to, though. If you go a couple weeks before you add that third set to that second exercise, that's great too. Basically, add it when you think you need it. And then pretty much this is going to go on until, so now let's say you're at 3 sets and 3 sets. And then let's say you're running this for like several months, and then you find that you actually need another set. So again, what you're going to do is increase one more set. So now incline press might be at 4 sets, dips might be at 3 sets, totaling 7 sets for the week. When you go to 8, or when you need to go to 8, instead of going to 4, 4, and 4, add a third lift for that muscle group. So you're doing 2 lifts on 2 days. So like, let's say, okay, so we're doing incline press and dips. Let's just say you add, I don't know, a flat dumbbell press. So flat dumbbell bench press. So let's just say you're doing you do 2 sets of dips, then 2 sets of flat dumbbell press. And the second upper day, you're doing 2 sets of, I said that wrong. You're doing 2 sets incline press, 2 sets of flat dumbbell press. Second day, you're doing 2 sets of dips, 2 sets of dumbbell press. You can play around with the order. It doesn't matter. Like, you can even swap out exercises at this point. But basically, for volume's sake, once you get to 8, you're getting to 8 sets, or you're getting to 4 sets in a single session, I would add a third exercise and drop it back down to 2 sets. And you're probably thinking, why are we doing so low number of sets? And this kind of leads into the variable of intensity. So intensity is a variable that I like to keep constant, or consistent, I should say. The reason is so that volume can be added appropriately. I recommend training with high intensity, or for some people, I should say very high intensity. I say this because a lot of people think they're training hard and they're not getting anywhere near like as close to failure as they think they are. Like when I've trained people in the past in person, we'll get done with a set of whatever, and they'll say, I'll ask them how many more could they have done, and they'll say, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3. And I know in my head they could have done like at least 5 more, maybe even 10 more. And I'll say, okay, in this next set, we're gonna forget about I said we're going to 10 reps or 12 reps or whatever. Just pick up the bar, whatever the lift it was, do the lift you're gonna have no end number. Just do as many as you possibly can. I'm here to spot you. If you fail, you fail. I'm here, you're good. They will almost always, most people will almost always do at least like 7 or 8 more reps than what they previously thought they could only do like 2 or 3 more reps on. And that's the majority of people. Obviously, if you're someone who knows you already train hard, you train to failure, you know what that's like. I'm not, obviously, know yourself. So for compound lifts, I train 1 to 2 reps away from failure. And what that means to me, if I'm 1 rep away from failure, that means I could have maybe have gotten 1 more rep. If I'm 2 reps away from failure, that means I could have maybe have gotten 1 more. Well, I could have probably gotten 1 more and then maybe 2 more. The reason I say maybe is because if you say that to yourself, you know you're actually pretty damn close to failure. Like, don't kid yourself and say, yeah, I was 1 rep away from failure. But if you're confident you're 1 rep away from failure, and you say, yeah, I could have definitely gotten 1 more, well, if you definitely could have gotten 1 more, maybe you could have gotten 2 more. So just err on the side of higher intensity is basically what I'm saying. So, and then for isolations, I train everything to failure and beyond failure. After you do it for some time, doing things like cheat reps and partials is something that I also do. I find that training with higher intensity helps you get unstuck in your training when you're unsure. Basically, what I mean by that is if you have someone who trains hard on some days and then not really on other days, and they think, and they don't think, they are stalling and they think it's their program, it's probably not the program, it's their inconsistent effort. So honestly, if you took nothing away from this and only applied this one tip of increasing your effort on every set and treating every set seriously, and this is a big reason why I'm only giving you 2 sets per session, is you're only getting 2 sets and you're going to train them hard. This one tip will impact your training the most. I can say it definitely has for me. So going into adding weight, this is probably something a lot of people stress about. So what I've found to be the most effective and simple is just to use double progression. If you don't know what that is, it's essentially you pick a rep range, let's say it's 4 to 6, and once you hit the top end of that rep range, you add weight. So let's say you're doing incline press with 100 pounds at 2 sets, and in the rep range of 4 to 6. So let's say set number 1, you hit 6 reps. Set number 2, you hit 5 reps. Then great. The next session, you're going to use 100 pounds again. In that next session, let's say first set you hit 6, second set you hit 6. Then next session, you're going to increase the weight. And then for increasing weight, it's going to be 5 or 10 pounds for pretty much everything. I mean, if it's smaller than that, then you probably know who you are, and you know what I mean. You know why you're stronger at that point. But if you're probably a beginner listening to this, it's going to be 5 to 10 pounds depending on the lift. If you're like really brand new to training, it's probably going to be 10 pounds, especially for compound lifts. Obviously for isolation lifts, it's not going to be 10 pounds, but use your own judgment for that. So, and then what you're going to do when you add weight, so now let's say you're at 100 pounds, I said, for incline press, you're now at 110. That's obviously going to lower your reps. So you're now, maybe you might do 4 reps, and the next week you do 5 reps, 4 reps, and you just keep going with that weight until you hit 6, and then add weight again. Simple as that. And a side note for adding weight is, don't think you always have to be adding weight to be progressing. Because if building muscle is your main goal, then taking that muscle to failure or close to failure for so many sets, so many times per week, is what's going to stimulate growth for that muscle, not the arbitrary number on the bar. Your body doesn't know numbers. It doesn't care about 135. If you're pressing and you're 125 works great for you in that rep range, but like you just really want 135, like your body, but your technique struggle, like you're compensating with other muscle groups, you're arching really bad or whatever it is. Like, don't, basically what I'm saying is don't sacrifice good lifting technique for a higher number on the bar because you think that's the only way to grow. It is not. It like I said before, I'll say it again. It's taking a muscle to or near failure so many times in a session and so many times per week is what's going to get it to grow, not the number on the bar. And picking relevant rep ranges, of course. So, yeah, that pretty much hit adding weight. Yeah, I think I pretty much covered everything right there. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. But as a beginner, I hope that this information is helpful, even if you're not a true beginner, you've been training for some time, but you've been struggling. You know, these are kind of the principles I would follow, and the reason I think this is good, or I think this is going to be effective, is that just applying what I've said should easily last you a year, if not more. Like this should last you even 2 or 3 years if you just like it'll take you so long. It'll take you months before you start adding sets, and then you finally add a third exercise. And then by this point, you're probably already 2 or 3 years in. You've been training so consistently for so long. You kind of just know what your body needs at that point. And at that point, you've left beginner type programming and really even intermediate programming, and really advanced programming is really just figuring out who you are and what you need. There's really no way to teach like that level of programming. It's learning what you need to accomplish your goal. So another thing I wanted to add is that if you train smart from day one, you do not need to waste months or years trying to figuring out, training and how you need to train. A lot of people will say like the beginner phase will be quick, and then the intermediate phase is like you'll wander around in that for a long time figuring it out. And there is a bit of truth in that, but I don't think it needs to be as long as people may think it needs to be if you actually train smart day one and not just like do random styles of training for months or years just because that's really just taking you away from your goal and what you want, which if your goal is to build as much muscle as possible, like the stuff I just laid out I think is a pretty simple, and it's going to be an effective way to get there. There's definitely more ways to get there. I just think that it's simple and effective, and it'll work. So yeah, I know this was a lot of information I just went into, and this has been quite a long video. I didn't want it to be this long, but I'd rather do it thorough than really quick. But like I've said before, I have a Google Docs in the description, so you can go to that and read through that, and it's really just more of a guide to creating a program for yourself. So definitely check that out, and hopefully that helps. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.